Diagnosing another problem with the MG. This one's with the fuel level sender, and so I'm having a problem. It's not reading. It usually won't go up above about an eighth or so, even if the tank is full, and I verified that the tank is full. And so it needs to be addressed, so I'll take a look at the wiring, and we'll see if we can diagnose and figure out what the problem is. So I came over to the back of the car here, underneath the right, or behind the right rear tire, and you can see here's the sender unit that's in the tank. The wires I already took off, attached to these 2 points right here. You can see how dirty it is right now, but I think my first problem that the first thing I'm gonna check out is on the wiring here. You can see that this one just came off in my hand. So obviously I probably have a wiring issue. So I'm gonna replace these wires, reconnect them, and then see if that doesn't solve the problem. And that'll be an easy fix if it does. If not, I'll have to look deeper into possibly removing the sender and either refurbishing or replacing the sending unit that's inside the tank right here. So I didn't take apart the whole wire. I just brought it back a few inches to expose some of the newer wire that was underneath the tape, and I put on some new connections there, and we'll test that out. One way you can test the wire to make sure that you have good continuity all the way through to the gauge is by just touching the two together. So you touch the two ends together, and then if you look up at the fuel gauge, which it's not focusing on right now, but when you do that, touch the two wires together, and then you look up at the fuel gauge, it'll go all the way to full fuel. And you can see now that they're not touched, it's rolling back to zero or empty. So that's one way to check the wires, to make sure that there's good continuity all the way through the wires to the from the sender to the gauge. So I know the wires are good. I'll reconnect it now, and let's see if we have a good sender now. Alright, so what I did was I sanded down the terminals as well to make sure that there was a good connection there. And the black one goes to the center, and then the green goes to the lower connection. And up on the actual gauge, it's still reading empty, but the problem is I ran the car down pretty much out of fuel based off of the mileage I had been driving, so that I could have it as low as possible, so that if I needed to change out the sender I could do that without a bunch of fuel in the tank. What I'll do is I'll fill it up with some more fuel, and I'll drive it around and see if it's fixed. Alright, today I'm going to remove the fuel level sender here in the tank to fix it. It's not reporting the correct fuel. It actually reports pretty much empty at all fuel loads. So what you need to do is twist this out. First, I've cleaned off the entire area. Make sure that you get it clean. You don't want any dirt, debris getting inside your tank. So then I'm taking a plastic chisel and a rubber mallet and just kind of back out this retaining ring. And make sure you have a catch can or some type of vessel to catch any fuel that leaks out. Hopefully you've drained your tank as much as you can. And so I probably have a little bit of fuel that'll leak out here. Once you get this retaining ring lined up with the divots here, there's 3 sides, you can basically wiggle it out of place, and that retaining ring comes off. After that, of course, I've already unplugged the 2 electrical connections here. You can take off your take out the sender, and just be careful taking it out because there'll be a float in there. Actually, I see the problem with mine already. That float is filled with liquid. Can you see that? If you shake it, you can see that there's gas inside there. So I'll set that aside. And then the last part of this is a rubber gasket. It's right in here. You can see that gasket, and you want to check this to make sure that it's in good shape. Mine, as you can see, is not. I don't know if that comes out in the camera, but there's all kinds of cracks in this gasket. So I will be replacing that, and I'll be testing, and I'll show you how to test your sender here to make sure that it's good. What I think happened to mine is that this float here just got filled with gas, and therefore it doesn't float anymore. It just stays at the bottom, and it reports that the fuel is empty at all times, even if I just filled the tank. The float here is just held in with a this clip, so you can just pop that off, and you can see that this is filled with fuel, which it should not be. I'm not sure where the hole is. It's not leaking, but there's a hole in there somewhere. In order to test your fuel level sensor, it's very easy. You just connect the wires back up while it's outside the car. Remember, it goes in like this, so this will be, when it's down here, obviously it would be empty. And then if I want to simulate that it's full, just turn the key, put the key in the car and turn it to the on position, and then raise this lever, and your fuel gauge should go up to full. The fuel gauge goes up to full. When you move the lever up, then it's working. And then when you bring it back down to about the middle, it should stop at about halfway, half tank of gas. And then if you go all the way down, it'll go down to empty. So that's how you test to see if your sender is the problem. Obviously, I can see that my sender is not the problem, so I'll just clean this one up. I'm replacing my fuel float with this brass unit, and here's the part number. I got it on eBay, I think. I think it might actually be listed as for a Mustang, an old a classic Mustang, but it should fit in the MG. So you just fit that into this little holder, and it fits perfectly right in there, and then that'll float. Okay, now I'm putting in the new gasket, and I got this from Moss Motors. I'll put the part number in the description, and then the sending unit with the new float. Then you put on the retaining ring. I got a new retaining ring from Moss as well, because it was extremely cheap. It was only a couple bucks. So the retaining ring, you line up there's 3 divots, and you line those up and you press it into place. And make sure when you start it, the lip of the retaining ring is behind all three of these tabs, right here, here, and up top here. If it's not behind, then it's going in crooked. So once it's started, then just keep on tapping to tighten it down fully. When you're connecting the electrical plugs back in, the light green load wire goes to the bottom connection, and then the light green, or the green and black, it's hard to tell, they might be hard to tell the colors, but the thicker wire should be the load wire, goes to the gauge. On mine it's slightly thicker than the other wire, and so I just connect the thicker wire, or the light green one, to the bottom connection. Last thing to do obviously is to check to make sure it works. So the car on, and fuel in the tank, and you can see that the fuel gauge is now coming up to the appropriate level. Hopefully that helps someone out, and see you in the next video.